Hello, everyone. Good evening here in Italy and good morning in the USA. Thank you all for joining us for our fourth talk in the outside SIRA series, which is an initiative designed to build meaningful connections between members of SIRA, the Italian Scientific Society of Architectural Restoration, and professionals from international institutions, associations, and various entities engaged in architectural conservation and safeguarding and enhancement of cultural heritage. So this online series, meetings and online talks, tries to encourage the exchange of ideas, but also to promote networks and international collaborations. This talk of today is part of the first cycle dedicated to advanced studies and funding. And we are especially pleased to present our online talk today with Jonathan Bell, to whom we thank very much for accepting to be present, Vice President of Programs at World Monuments Fund. But before leaving the floor to Jonathan, I would like also to thank to Emanuele Morezzi, who's responsible together with Maria Cristina Giambruna to the Internationalization Committee as part of SIRA, and who sustained us and supported us in organizing this series of events. So Emanuele, if you want to bring the institutional greetings and hello.
Of course. Of course, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much, Juana, and a good evening and good morning to Dr. Bell, of course, and thank him for being with us now in this event. Yes, actually, SIRA, the Italian Society for the Architectural Restoration, promotes this series of events. The International Commission, as Juana said, I'm coordinating with Maria Cristina Giambruno, promotes define its agenda 1 year ago when we started our mandate. Since our society counts on almost 300 members, divided quite equally in one half regarding as members of university professor of architectural restoration, and the other half about young researchers and scholars. We define our agenda in order to plan activities useful to establish a dialogue and opportunities for all our members to be in touch in the international context. Well, actually, we work, and we are still working on the topic regarding database. We're working on it regarding trying to figure out which kind of activities and research we are still working on as society, the members of our society. We worked the same time on journals, finding out which kind of opportunity or of publishing and promoting our research we have and we will have in future. And we also define a series of events useful to establish a dialogue with the international institutions. And this series of events is actually outside SIRA. This series of events we are taking part today. We are, as Ioana said, we are at the end of the first cycle, the first branch of these events. And this is an activity that we are really interested on. We are really focused on this series of events. Actually, it's getting bigger and bigger, and this is just thanks to the work of Sonia, of Alessia, of Stefania, and Oana, who voted deeply themselves to the topic, and did just a great work. This series of events is recorded, and so it's an opportunity not just to be in touch directly online, but also in the future, according to our channels. What does it mean, be in touch or establish a dialogue? Well, actually, we define the title outside SIRA because since all of us, we are part of academic environment and habits, we deeply believe that we should move outside our environments, scientific environments, in order to find out the opportunities that, in a way, they may wait for us outside the very pattern that we used to follow every day or in our career. And so I really would like to thank Dr. Bell for being with us today. It's an amazing opportunity for us to host him, first of all, and of course, World Monuments Fund, talking about dialogue, heritage, internationalization. I deeply believe that your institution, Dr. Bell, is actually one of our point of reference. In a way, it's like the stakeholder in the field. So it's a deep honor for us to host you, and we really would like to thank you for your time and for your availability to being with us this evening or this morning, according to the point of view, of course. So I don't want to take more time. Thank you so much indeed, and I think would like to leave the floor to Anna for the presentation of our guest. Thank you so much indeed.
Thank you so much, Manuele. And just a brief bio reference to our public that is connected online. So Dr. Jonathan Bell is Vice President of Programs at World Monuments Fund, which I believe everybody in this society knows what it means, where he oversees the organizations of an entire portfolio of cultural heritage projects around the globe. So Dr. Bell has worked with the Getty Conservation Institute on World Heritage sites in China and Egypt, evaluated site management from Kazakhstan to Colombia, and overseen strategic planning for large-scale flood infrastructure with the County of Los Angeles. He serves on multiple international professional scientific committees and sits on editorial boards for 2 academic journals, and to whom we thank once again for accepting this invitation. So, Jonathan, if you wish to share the presentation, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you all for that very warm welcome. It's really lovely to be here. It's an honor to be here. So I'm going to share the screen and continue talking with some good photos. Are we all seeing that? Good. So as everyone said, I am with the World Monuments Fund, Vice President of Programs. And so in that role, I oversee all of the work that we do around the world. And I thought today I'd come and provide you all with a bit, on one hand, an overview of World Monuments Fund, how we work, what we do, but then also look at a few specific projects and highlight some key issues that we are trying to address with our work. So basically, people always ask me, what do we do? How do you do things? And so I always have a few slides in the beginning to explain that. What do we actually do and how do we make things happen? And I think the first thing to know is what we do, our mission is really to partner with local communities and help them promote and protect the places that are important to them. That's what we do. And so I think everyone on this call, all of you are professionals, everyone will agree that heritage is really about people. And so we start with the people. And that's one of the wonderful things about working with World Monuments Fund is that the projects come to us through stakeholders, local stakeholders who care about these places. And that also gives us incredible access. Just a little bit in our background, this is actually our 60th anniversary. So it's a big year for us. A lot of events around the world celebrating 60 years of doing this work. And I should say that even though I won't be talking about it today, one of our earliest projects was actually in Italy, in Venice, in 1966, when there were some serious floods. And so we were involved in the recovery from the flooding. So it was really our second ever project. But since that time, we've had over 700 projects, and we've been able to raise over $300 million for work around the world, heritage work. And people are often surprised and assume that we have many offices, and we do, but that we have a staff of hundreds of people, and we're actually quite small. We have a core staff of, we're growing, so a core staff of about 70 at this point, scattered around the world. But of course, all of the work that we do is through partnerships, and I'll say more about that in a moment, and hiring local expertise, regional expertise, and often international expertise. So through that work we do, we have over about 400 people a year who are employed through all of our projects. Three main pillars of our work. The first, of course, is the physical conservation. And in that, I include all of the studies, the planning, the drawings and design work, and even assessment of heritage places. And then, of course, the physical intervention. This may be stabilizing walls, it may be wall painting conservation, repairing roofs, drainage work, stabilizing archaeological sites, and so on. So that's one key pillar. The second is capacity building. And we do this really in a number of ways across a whole spectrum, from just working with our partners on the ground and having them learn from us by working alongside us. And often, of course, we're learning from them at the same time, to full-fledged training programs. One of the training programs that we created in China actually a few years ago became a full-fledged master's degree at Tsinghua University, one of the top universities in China, in decorative arts conservation. So we really have this run the gamut in terms of training and making sure that we are supporting both current generations, current experts and professionals, but also helping to create that next generation of professionals. And finally, a big part of what we do is advocacy. And I like to say that advocacy is in everything we do, because it's about talking about heritage, why it's important, its diversity, how it impacts people, and of course also the work that we do and the value that it has. And so that takes the form of doing sessions like this with all of you and many public events that we do, but we do also put together full-fledged advocacy campaigns to save heritage sites that may be threatened with redevelopment or abandonment or some other challenges. So the how we work, this is the question I think that I get the most. How do you actually do all this? And as I said, partnerships are key. We are a small organization. We can't do everything we do without having really good local partners. And the capacity of those partners varies quite a bit. In some places we work, there's really not a lot of local professional capacity. And so we're really holding their hand, developing with them strategies and paths forward and treatment plans, et cetera, and then bringing in the necessary expertise and professionals to do the work. In other places, we're very lucky to have partners who really have the capacity to do the work. And so we're able to really be kind of a thought partner, to brainstorm, to help shape projects, but then let them run with the projects and us to be kind of standing alongside them throughout. And so we shape the project according to local capacities, according to budgets that we have, of course, always working with local community members. And I use community in a broad sense. These are sometimes local residents and people who are just stakeholders in a place because they consider it their heritage, but also, of course, the professional community and working as well with government entities and local authorities and so forth. As I said, we bring in the expertise that's needed, always trying first to find local expertise. We want to do our best to employ local professionals when possible, but sometimes that level of professionalism isn't available locally. And so we have to go either to the region or much broader internationally to bring that expertise, and we'll do that. And of course, in our work, we use a mixture of tried and true methods, things and approaches that all of you here on the screen are very familiar with, but also we are at times innovating, coming up with new strategies, new ways to approach even old problems. And maybe we'll look at some of that in some of the projects I want to highlight. So just to give you a sense of our current footprint, really at any given moment, we have about 50 active projects. That's our official number. I'll share with all of you that really it's usually quite higher. It's closer to 70 or 80 just because there are projects that may be on hold or that we're in the process of developing and we're not yet counting them as official projects. However, that's all work that my team, that our team is doing. and developing with local partners. So you can see here 44 active projects, 10 programs. Within those programs are often multiple projects in 34 countries. So just a snapshot of today and what's happening around the world with World Monuments Fund at this moment. So as I promised, I wanted to come to some projects that we've actually been working on to show you a bit about how we work, show you really the insides of how we approach things and how projects have started, and then also some of the key things that we're trying to develop and model for the field. And so the first place to start, it's often the first place we start here at World Monuments Fund, is our work at Angkor Archaeological Park. We've been there for over 30 years and have a very large footprint there in Cambodia. And so it's a wonderful way to look at a little bit the evolution of the field, but also the evolution of World Monuments Fund. So we were actually invited to Cambodia, and it is a blurry photo because it's an old photo. This is a photo from 1989. We were the first Western heritage organization invited into the country right after the end of the conflicts associated with the Khmer Rouge. And I'm sure you are all familiar, those conflicts decimated the country. Unfortunately, a quarter of the entire population of Cambodia were lost in that period. And with many of them, there were quite high-level skills and professionals who were trained and quite experienced in caring for the incredible monuments and heritage of Cambodia. But many of them were lost. So a lot of that knowledge was indeed lost. And so we were invited in 1989. This is that first team photo with our local team we put together, and invited by the then king of Cambodia to come in and help rebuild that expertise and the professionalism to care for the incredible monuments that are not only in the Angkor Archaeological Park, but across all of Cambodia. And so over the years, since 1989, we've had the opportunity to work at 4 major sites within Angkor Archaeological Park. And I just wanted to walk you through 3 of them very briefly. The first is Preah Khan. This is a really incredible, huge religious site, dates back to the end of the 12th century, founded by Jayavarman VII. And the entire area of the site is about 56 hectares. So a huge, huge religious complex that really was also the seat of power at the time. Indeed, at its height, it would have had about 100,000 people in residence just to administer and maintain the site and tend to all the needs of the priests. And often there were royals who were involved in the care of the site and also even in governing from this temple. And so we came in and actually didn't look anything like this. This entire passageway in this very famous Hall of the Dancers was entirely collapsed. It was impossible to read the structure, which is a very long cruciform structure. And so over the years, we worked training local partners to do the work and righted a lot of the existing elements, stone elements, creating this access for visitation and allowing one to better read the site, understand how it was used and what it was about. This is another part of the site. I think these are one of the iconic images of Angkor. I think many people think of Angkor and they think of these strangling ficus trees that seem to be sucking the life out of the structures that are common in this part of the world, particularly in these areas of long-term abandonment. But these incredible stone structures did withstand, and though they had suffered quite a bit, our work was to rehabilitate them, bring them back, and allow them to be safe, but also understandable for visitors. And I should say this project was the first systematic preservation effort in the country after the years of conflict in Cambodia. We also took on a project at Angkor Wat, arguably the most famous site in Angkor. This, of course, is one of the largest religious sites in the world. It is 161 hectares in area, so a huge, huge site. And it's also one of the few heritage places that dons a national flag. It sits on the national flag of Cambodia. And here we were invited to work on this incredible hallway corridor. It's about 50 meters in length with this beautiful frieze that depicts this the Samudra Manthan. This is the churning of the ocean in Hindu and also Buddhist myth, from which come a number of gods and also the elixir of life. And the challenge here, we weren't working on the frieze itself, but actually working on the roof. The challenge here was that there had been earlier French conservation efforts using cement to try to waterproof the roof. And as everyone here knows, that's not the best option for a number of reasons. Not only does it not waterproof, it introduces lots of salts. And ultimately, there was a lot of leakage down below onto that beautiful frieze and into the corridor. And so really the bulk of our work was removing the inappropriate intervention, the cement that had been put in, and rehabilitating, restoring the original Khmer drainage that was created in the 12th century. It still worked and just needed some loving care. So that was a big part of our work there. And since then, really, we haven't seen any leakage. We also were able to recreate some of the drop ceiling, the intricately carved drop ceilings on the interior. And finally, in Cambodia, in Angkor Archaeological Park, the last site that we've adopted, and this is the last site that we're continuing to work on. Just last year in January, we officially returned the 3 other sites we were working on to the care and continued maintenance of Apsara, which is the local authority in charge of the archaeological park. And we still continue to work on this site of Phnom Bakhain. This is a huge man-made mountain pyramid. It's actually one of the earliest temples at the site. It dates back to the very late 9th century, and is, as you will see here, this huge structure in this aerial image that is also quite famous for visitors because many visitors have climbed this structure to watch the sun set behind Angkor Wat. And one sees the 3 big spires of Angkor Wat from the higher platform here. So you can imagine a 1,000-year-old temple, stone temple, that has been basically left to live its life without much intervention for centuries. And then in recent, let's say the past 50 years or so, well, really 30 years, I guess, a huge amount of visitation, of tourism, all the vibrations of people climbing this site, causing a lot of damage. And it not only caused problems for the structure itself, but in particular for the waterproofing of this huge site. So we continue to work on it. We've been working on it for a good 10 years, and more like 12 years at this point. Another 6 to go, systematically removing all of the stone, waterproofing, stabilizing, and then when possible, replacing that original stone, and when necessary, of course, putting in new stone. We're also using historic stone to replace some of the damaged stone that's as possible. And we have an incredible team of 75 full-time workers in Cambodia. And we have, in particular, 2 or 3 folks who are incredible at looking at the old areas of fallen stone and saying, this piece will fit right there, and let's reuse that. Let's clean it up and reuse that. We've also, as you might imagine, done a lot of things related to visitor management and creating a carrying capacity study to understand how many visitors this site can actually withstand. But what I really wanted to highlight here was this 30 years of work, almost 35 at this point, has really allowed us to also take a moment to look back and evaluate our impact. And that's a key thing that I think we all need to do a bit better in the field. And so one of the things that we've done is to really create a whole assessment of what our work has been, what we intended to do, and what that impact looks like. And so you can see some of the things here. We worked, within the archaeological park at 4 sites. Many of the 75 employees at one time, we had over 100 full-time employees. Some of them have been with us for the full 30 years that we've been working. So we've offered long-term stability of employment. And I should say a lot of this comes from interviews that we've done with our own staff and also with others at the Encore Archaeological Park. They have highlighted that with this stability of employment, they've been able to invest in housing and land, often for the first time in their families, education for their children, and things like transportation that they really couldn't afford before. A general improvement of the quality of life. And then, of course, we like to believe, but we have actually demonstrated, and I'll show you that in a moment, that we've reestablished this local capacity and actually really enhanced it. I will just say that our colleagues across the archaeological park often turn to us as a model for not only how to do the work, but how to train our local staff so that they become sound professionals. And of course, there's all this compound effect on tourism and all the other kind of good things that are happening in Cambodia. Just to give you some numbers, and these numbers are a little bit out of date, but as of a few years ago, we had spent nearly $20 million entirely on this project. Over a quarter of that went directly to our local staff and local supplies. That is the equivalent of about 3,000 full-time employees. And each of these people have been able to support their dependents. And so really there's this kind of ripple effect of supporting and enhancing the lives of basically the equivalent of 10,000 people in 1 year. So we've been able to really calculate this and understand what that impact looks like. The other thing I wanted to show, I mentioned building capacity. I think a key thing here is the money that's spent. And in the early years, you can see this only goes back to 2002, but you can see on this graph the percentage of money spent on foreign consultants. As I said, we'll bring in that foreign expertise as needed. Over the years, and as we started new projects, you see these peaks. We were at a peak of 70%, then another peak of 60%. But over the years, as we've developed this team who are full-fledged professionals in their own right, you can see that falls to about 10 in 2020. And I can tell you today, we're not using any foreign expertise. All of our expertise is homegrown. And so I think that is a real testament to enhancing and building that local capacity. And something that we as professionals need to do more of as we measure our impact. So I want to jump, in the last few minutes I want to talk about two other projects briefly and talk about water. One of the things that we've been doing in the past few years is really trying to highlight the relevance of cultural heritage to our lives today, and particularly in helping us address some of the world's greatest challenges. Heritage is not just a pretty place to visit, not just a source of revenue from tourism, but it also provides solutions and can help us think about some of our challenges today in a different way. So the first thing I'm going to talk about this site in Thailand. This is in Ayutthaya. It's called Wat Chai Watthanaram. We call it Wat Chai for short. This is a 17th century temple that is officially not part of the World Heritage Site at Ayutthaya. It's just outside within the buffer zone, but it's part of that Ayutthaya incredible landscape of temples and other structures. It was abandoned in 1767 when the Burmese came in and attacked the Thai capital. That was then moved to what is today Bangkok. And this temple has sit for all of those years. An incredible site, but I want to talk about water. And this is the bad part of water, where we are often trying to protect heritage places from the challenges of water. And we got involved first in 2011 because of a major flood that took place in the Chao Phraya River. And we were asked to come in and develop some strategies to keep the river at bay for future flooding. This was one of the world's costliest disasters at the time, and the temple itself was submerged in about 2 meters of water. So you can imagine what challenges that presents for a site like this. So one of the things that we did was to create a flood wall. And here you see it's a swing design, a swing gate flood wall that basically is down at regular times. And then when they know there are major rains coming, and there's also a coordination across the whole water system management, particularly the river management of dams and whatnot upstream, so that they will tell everyone, okay, we're going to have to release water, or we know there's going to be a lot of water coming, please deploy this floodgate. And so this is what it looks like fully deployed. It gives another 2.7 meters in height of protection to the site. And just some pictures of the construction. This is another wall that was built on a different, the other side of the site. So you can see that work happening. And just to give you a sense, both of how this has worked and been successful, but also the ongoing challenges of climate change. This is a flood that happened 2 years ago, and everything is fully deployed. And so you can see the floods, you can see the areas around, buildings around that are entirely submerged, but the site has remained dry. However, the waters are only 10 centimeters from the top. So the challenges of climate change are real. And it's also one of the things that we need to consider as we think about design options. How do we design for the future when all of these challenges are changing and continuing to increase? But for the moment, this has been successful. Now I want to come to the flip side of water, which is having enough water in communities and what heritage can do to support water security and tackle water scarcity. This is a project that we're doing in Nepal, in the Kathmandu Valley. Just a few facts and figures on water security. I'm sure you're all familiar with some of this, but 2 to 3 billion people experience water shortages at least once a month every year around the world. By 2050, it's thought that our urban water demand will increase by 80%. Another 2.4 billion people in cities could likely face water scarcity. So this is a real challenge globally, but particularly in South Asia, water scarcity is a huge, huge challenge. This is a map of Nepal, and it shows basically the drought risk. And unfortunately, as you can see, there's no place in Nepal that is not below this medium-high level. And key places, Kathmandu is right here, are in high drought risk. And indeed, across the Kathmandu Valley, the water demand is typically 3 times the supply. And many people who do have running water, when they go to turn their faucet multiple times a month, will not have that water. And 20% of residents have zero access to clean water in their homes. So that means that there are a lot of people who require water from other sources. And again, this is where we can turn to heritage. This system of hitis, as they're called, is an incredible system of water management, water storage, and water provision in particular, that taps into local aquifers, traditionally local ponds across the Kathmandu Valley, and then creates these channels and outspouts, often that are beautifully carved, that are points of collection for water. And many of them had run for hundreds of years. The earliest record of the hitis that we know of is from the 6th century. So this is a system that's been in place over 1,400 years. There were at some point at the height nearly 500, actually over 500. There were thousands of hitis. Today, there are about 500 of them still intact, but only about half of them actually provide water because they've run dry. And one of the challenges, you can see, this is water that is not only clean, but that is very much used by the community. And just to show you a little bit of how this system works, and one of the challenges that we're facing in Kathmandu Valley is uncontrolled development. And so we have a number of things where these ponds that used to be a feature of the Kathmandu Valley have often been paved over. And so you lose that water source. And they're usually replenishing underground aquifers that the hiti system is tapping into. But you're losing that replenishment source from pavement, hard paved features. And then on top of it, we have a lot of construction. where people are digging foundations for buildings right into the center of these channels that were built and not preserving them. So then the water is cut and the Hiti at this end runs dry. Just to show you that it is definitely a community endeavor, because there is not the policy in place to protect these as there should be. And this is one of the efforts that we are taking on. But there are some really interesting individuals. This is someone who built a building and found the Hiti structure, the channel that feeds a Hiti nearby. And he basically designed the building to go around it and keep that intact. So you can't see it in this photo, but if you look, you see water running through this, and the Hiti at the other end provides it. But we're also actually doing the work to excavate and rehabilitate the Hitis so that those that have run dry can now provide water again. And it's, I think this is a really wonderful way to rehabilitate ancient infrastructure. This is cultural heritage that really has an impact on people's lives today. And so with that, I will stop because I think my 25 minutes are up. And thank you all. And I hope there are lots of questions.
Thank you, Jonathan, for this interesting presentation with a lot of reflection points that I think we all have already. And I think I will pass the floor to Alessia for the first questions, and after that to my colleagues, Stefania and Sonia, while waiting for the questions in the chat. So anyone who's online right now and wants to ask a question to Jonathan, please write it in the chat. And in the end, we'll leave the floor to everyone. Thank you. So, Alessia?
Yeah, thank you very much for the presentation with a lot of inspiring pictures and description of this work. And we would love to, let's say, to take advantage of your knowledge and your expertise in so many different countries. Also to ask you if you, according to your experience, have identified some main challenges and issues that are, let's say, now on the currency, the more urgent themes that in the terms of preservation of cultural heritage are present in the different country and different contexts in terms of resources, management, expertise. You mentioned a lot of expertise and how important they are, let's say, to know the place and learn and develop their knowledges. And that's, let's say, one first question. So what are, according to your feeling, the main or the more urgent challenges and issues that we need to face?
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Alessia. Well, I think you mentioned one of them, and I think you will all be familiar with this one, which is funding. We all need to struggle to find the funding necessary to do good work. Work that not only we believe in, but that we know has value and makes a difference to communities and in people's lives. And so that's a challenge. And I think that we all need to work a bit harder to encourage, really all entities, government structures, but also corporate and others that have money to see the value in this work and actually dedicate funding so that we can do that. So I think that's one key thing, and I think everybody here has experienced that and is familiar with that. The other things that we see as key challenges across the field, and this happens kind of everywhere in some form or other, they won't be surprising to you. One I spoke about briefly is climate change. All of our old approaches, old solutions, they won't necessarily hold up as we see the impacts of climate change in so many places. More water, changing rainfall patterns, more frequent drought, etc. More, increased cycles of freeze thaw, all of these sorts of things that we know impacts building materials, but also impacts the general capacity of these places to survive and provide the function they're meant to provide for people. And that's everywhere in the world. We're seeing some aspect of that. I think the other big thing that is interesting, that's kind of we always call it a double-edged sword, is tourism. Because tourism provides opportunities, of course, it can provide revenue, But as you know, it can be a source that is difficult to control. It can be a force that's really difficult to control. We see places like Venice, for instance, that are overrun by tourism. Local communities have been pushed out because they can't afford to live there, and quality of life is not very pleasant either, given the masses of people coming. And then the flip side of that is there are so many heritage places that receive very little visitation and therefore aren't able to tap into the revenue that visitation can, that tourism can bring. And again, it goes back to then they don't have money to be taken care of. So I think all of these things we need to think a bit more holistically about how they work together and how we develop strategies that are long term, but that also provide for heritage needs and community needs.
That's a very strong point, I guess. And you also mentioned another issue during your speech that was about, especially also the fact that you try to measure the impact that your work is having on the society, and really found that point very interesting because we are not so much trained into that part. So in defining how to measure the impact of our work. So I found it very, very interesting, and also I guess it will help also to manage the holistic perspective and combine these the different issues. And so that brings me to the, let's say, to another question, which is in terms of how the fund work, how the association, the institution work, and especially how we suppose that you receive a lot of projects to be evaluated, and how do you define the hierarchy of the project, or the, let's say, the priorities on which to intervene, and which you decide to support?
Sure. So I guess I'll start with the criteria piece that we tend to consider, and I think these are never hard and fast. I think anyone who is a heritage professional, also works with their gut a bit, right? And I think that's important for all of us. But typically, in terms of projects, we are looking for things that have some sense of urgency. It doesn't mean that there has to have been a crisis right away, though we do often get involved in crisis response, but that there's a moment in time where there's a specific need, whether it's threatened, as you saw with the floods, or it's threatened by a risk of redevelopment and demolition, or lack of funding, and so that is a challenge. Or sometimes it's an opportunity as well, that suddenly the government has changed and the government is suddenly much more open and eager to have partners in this realm, and we can do a lot of good work together. Or that there is funding that's available to do good work and it makes sense. So that's one, the sense of urgency, something that is timely that we should be responding to. The second thing is, of course, significance, but I'm always very careful when I talk about significance because, again, for us, the significance is defined by the local community. So, we're not really assigning significance and saying this is significant because of the architectural history, or by association, or the scientific approaches behind it, but because the community is coming to us and saying this place is important to us, and we really want you to be involved. Then the third thing is feasibility. We take on a lot of projects, some very big projects, and we work at very iconic places like you saw Angkor Wat. We have a big project at Versailles, at the Alhambra, and the Forbidden City, all current projects. But still, we have to be sure that we can actually manage these projects, that they're of a size and complexity that, given our skills and our scope, that we're able to manage them, and that we will be able to secure the funding necessary to have the impact that we want to have. And so that's the fourth thing, which I guess is really the most important thing, is impact. What type of impact would we be able to have? What do we want to accomplish with the project? And does it make sense for our mission? Does the impact align with what we want to do and the message that we want to share about heritage? The second part of this that I'll say, because you asked also a little bit about how projects come to us. One of the key mechanisms for us to select and bring projects into our family, as we call it, is through a program called the Watch, the World Monuments Watch. And this is really our flagship program. Every 2 years, we basically put out a call, and it's a call that's open to anyone. It's open to any government entity or authority, any institution, university, or any individual, as well as community-based organizations. And so typically we get around 300 nominations every 2 years. And then we go through a very robust process of internal and external reviews. And at the very end, we have an international experts panel who helps us make a final decision of 25 places that end up on our watch. So we just announced our 2025 watch in January of this year. And you may have noticed in my very first slide, something that's crazy, maybe a little controversial. We put the moon on our watch this year. And so that was why there was an image of the moon, talking about the heritage of humanity that's on the moon, and the new space race, and a lot of new efforts to land on the moon. And so how do you protect these places and put policy in place that's at an international level to keep these things safe? But anyway, the watch is really our key mechanism for bringing sites and bringing projects to us. And then still we have to go and find funding project by project. We do have some funding partners alongside the watch, and then we'll present some of those projects to them, and they may fund them, but we still basically have to go out project by project and find the funding. So that's always challenging and a big part of the work as well.
So if I can, I have a couple of questions too. First of all, thank you very much, Jonathan, to be here for your interesting presentation. And the first question that is more a curiosity that I have is how, if you have a particular or specific strategies to plan the management, the future management, because we know that one of the big problems in the international cooperation is to guarantee to the interventions a long durability in time, and that the community and the local institution bring this legacy and take it as something to take care. No, do you have some specific strategies, guidelines, or plans in this frame?
That's a great question. So I'll answer it in a few different ways. I think first is, this is one reason that our big approach is to work with local partners, because obviously these places are not ours, and we are only there at invitation of someone or some group. But ultimately also, we're only going to be there for a short period of time. And so we need to make sure that there is that entity or that group of people on the ground who care about the place and then can continue to be involved in management. And so one of the things that we try to do, I'm not going to say we always do it successfully, but what we try to do is always build up, enhance the skills of those local partners for the long-term management. And so when we do a project, even if it's a very physical project, stabilizing a structure and doing some drainage and things like that, we leave them with a maintenance plan. This is what needs to happen. This is how how frequently you need to kind of go around and do inspections. This is how inspections happen. And by the way, while we were doing this work, we also noticed these other challenges that perhaps we don't have funding for now, or it's not the right moment to do them. But these are things you're going to have to pay attention to. And these may be partners you could work with in the future if we're not here. So we try to always leave every partner with kind of a packet to help them into the future. Now, I think where we've been most successful are those places where we've been for a long time. So Cambodia, for instance, we were one of the partners that helped establish UPSARA, which is a government entity in charge of the whole archaeological park. And we've worked closely with them to also help build up their skills. And they are incredible professionals. And again, it's not just because of us. There's a whole international community of people working there. But all together, we've been helping to build up UPSARA. And really now they have the skills to do much of this work on their own. So we see that also at the Alhambra, where we've been for almost 30 years. Again, similarly, the Forbidden City in Beijing, where we've been for over 20 years. We've been working closely with those partners, and we see the impact of that. But that's very hard to do for most people. And even for us, we don't typically have that long-term funding to say, we'll be here for 30 years and we'll work closely with you. So I think we need to find ways to be able to do this on the short term. And I think a key thing, what I want to highlight is we truly believe if a site has been in our watch or we've worked there, it's part of our family. And so we do encourage people to come back to us when they have challenges, they have new needs, at least for us to give advice and to be able to talk about ways they might approach that. And I think as professionals, we can all try to offer that. We don't all have so many hours in the day, but we can try to just continue to hold the hands of our partners into the future so that they're more successful.
Thank you very much. And the second question is related to the many challenges to work in so different international context, and also about the way to share a particular type of approach related to the conservation and to the way to develop the intervention, especially working with local institution and establishing the discussion about the way to implement the work. How is so difficult and challenging this process, and also if you have also in this direction some procedures, some ways to work, to share the approach.
Yeah, I think a key part of that, and it takes time and patience, that's the challenge, but a key part of that is making sure you include all of the decision makers. So if it's a site that is overseen by, the municipality, or it's a national level site and there are multiple layers of government that have some say in the care of the site, as well as the site managers and local institutions that may be doing research there, it's really important to get everyone involved at some moment and kind of bring them to the table, as we say, and sit down and talk through the process. Because I think what happens otherwise is if someone is left out, nobody likes being left out, right? And then you may get, 80% of the stakeholders to agree to an approach, to a strategy, and the 20% who are left out are always going to try to cause problems. Not always in a mean way, but, that's human nature. We all do this. So one of the things that we try to do at the very beginning of a project is, we call it community mapping. It's really understanding all the players. Who are all of the stakeholders? Is there, local residents who really feel this is their place and they want to have a say? Is there a representative, a community representative, whom we can invite to a meeting? All the different governmental and other officials and authorities, making sure we have some representative so they know they've been part of the process. And then it's really about walking through the challenges and the logic behind the strategies that we're recommending. And it doesn't mean it goes well all the time and you get 100% consensus, but I do find that people, if they're at least included in the conversation, they're willing to go along, even if they're not your biggest champion, And so I think that's really essential. But it takes time and patience. And of course, there's some money associated with that. But it really is about a meeting that you invite everyone to, you encourage to have them come. And then over the life of the project, you have those sorts of check-ins so that everyone is engaged. And I'll just say one other thing in terms of, process and approach. I think that we as a field are not always very good at communicating what we do, making it accessible to a broader public. And when we're talking about politicians and government officials and the general public, right, they need to understand what we're talking about. We can't use shop speak. We can't use complicated architectural or technical terms. We need to explain to them, this is the challenge, this is the solution, and this is how we do it. And this is why it costs this much, or this is why it takes this long. And it's very important. And so I think we need more people in the field who are good communicators, who can take all of our technical things and turn it into something that's accessible to a broader public.
Thank you, Jonathan. I would like also to add a few questions. Actually, I have in my mind a lot of questions, but I will stay on 2 or 3 questions. First of all, thank you for the really inspiring presentation of your activity and work. The first question is related to the 60th anniversary that you have mentioned. Therefore, of course, it would be interesting for us to know something more about the evolution of the role of the World Monument Fund over those 6 decades in terms of interaction with the national and international institutions, but also in terms of priorities, perspectives that have evolved over time, because it was actually, well, the year after the issue of the Venice Charter, so in a completely different period, but today we have talked about climate change, environmental issues, and so on, so we are in a completely different context. So somehow this evolution of role and perception and perspectives, it's something really interesting. So this is actually the first question. And the second that maybe is related is following the new challenges of our times, how you manage in World Monument Fund the creation of the team on project per project. I mean, you work with your staff, with the consultants, with local professionals, and so on. So you may have to put together art historians with architects, with environmental engineers, and so on. So I was wondering if, depending on the geographical context and also the period of time, this creation of the team has raised specific challenges in your work.
Sure. Thank you, Stefania. So the evolution of the organization, as I mentioned, one of our earliest projects was in Venice. And so really the way we started, it was really 2 people. And it was this army general who started the organization. And he was an engineer by training. And he was really moved by some of the needs. He saw beautiful places. He had traveled the world quite a bit and saw that there were great needs. And he thought, I'm an engineer. I can come up with some solutions for this. Somebody should be out helping. And so there was an early project. I think that was officially the first in Pisa, of course, the tower, the Leaning Tower of Pisa. And then we also were working in Lalibela. This is a World Heritage Site in Ethiopia of these stone-cut churches that are cut into the rock. And then Venice, I think, really brought us to the kind of international, the attention, a broader attention of the world, because, of course, that caught a lot of headlines. And then we were trying to work with the Venetian authorities and others to come up with both recovery plans, but then some long-term strategies at that moment. And then we just kind of kept adding projects. And so I have to say for the first 30 years in particular, we really were project by project. And as I mentioned, the watch and how projects come to us, some of that is still in our DNA. You know, things come to us as individual projects. What I would say is more recently, and the other thing I should say about that is projects and very much iconic sites, right? In part because they're also easier to raise money for. What I'd say in recent years, I think that has changed. Some of that is still there, and we still have to raise money project by project, but we are trying to be a bit more holistic and systematic in how we approach things. So you may remember on that map I showed, there were 10 programs and networks. So we're trying to think about things like climate change. We have within our climate change strategy, we have a suite of types of projects. We have a whole suite of water projects. Like I showed you in Nepal, we have a number of those across India. We have one in Peru and others that are developing, focused on what historic infrastructure, water management infrastructure can do for the challenges of water scarcity today. And so trying to make sure that we're investing in those types of projects and taking those projects on. Similarly, we have another program on historic gardens and adapting historic gardens and growing spaces to the challenges of climate change, right? And so we've got a suite of projects that are just starting now around the world that's bringing them together in a network and then actually creating individual projects at each site that model some aspect of climate resilience that can then be used by anyone dealing with this type of heritage. So more and more, we're trying to be a bit more systematic and think holistically and not just take whatever project comes to us, but kind of carve out an area that we can develop some new strategies and approaches and then disseminate that across the field. For the second question, in terms of the team, you know, I'd love to say we have this great formula and we follow it and it works really well every time. It's really, quite honestly, a bit more ad hoc. We have broken the world up into regions. And so, for instance, I have regional directors who oversee regions. They're familiar with those places. They speak the local language. They know the heritage of that broader region, and they have a network of professionals in the region. So as we're developing a project there, they really reach out to their network and figure out who is the right person or right group of people who to do this and you know, address this particular challenge. And so again, awfully often we're trying to find people locally because it makes it easier. You speak local language, you know local customs and approaches, you're familiar with also the heritage of that place, right? How these things are put together, the kind of technological aspects of building and construction from that period and that region. So that's often how we do it. But as I said, there are times where maybe we're addressing a new problem or addressing an old problem in a new way, and we know there's somebody from around the world who really is the key person we need to bring in, and then we would bring them in for that purpose.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The attention to the strategy, the approach to involve the local professional, the local expert, of course, gives these advantages of being able to be closer to the context, but it also offers the opportunity of an international exchange. So from you, with them, and so somehow it's of course also an occasion, a platform for exchange on different sectors. Now I leave the floor to Anna for another question.
Yeah, but actually Stefania just introduced, let's say, one of the last questions or issues that could be of interest for both in a matter of institutions, because we were also wondering, but I think you were wondering from your side, which could be the collaboration, the role SIRA, World Monuments Fund, also in terms of training, research, creating networks, but also addressing in common ways the issues encountered by the foundation. So if you see any role that SIRA could play through its network in Italian, in Italy and Italian setting on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are a few things there. So first, I should say we work quite a bit with Italian professionals. We don't at the moment have any projects in Italy, and I'll come back to that in a moment. But we have, of course, worked quite a bit in Italy in years past. We actually had an office in Italy some years ago that subsequently closed. And we often are bringing Italian professionals to projects around the world. So we worked at a site in Jordan on wall painting conservation. We worked closely with Icere in Rome and brought teams and students to do the work there. We have, some of you may know Maddalena Akenza. We work quite a bit with her. She's working with us in Iraq, in Babylon. We've brought conservators to Thailand for plaster conservation at a temple there. So we do already work quite a bit with a number of Italian experts and professionals, but we would always love that network to grow of the folks we know and to be able to reach out to you. The thing I'll come back to, and thank you, Anna, for kind of queuing it up, is we are in the process of trying to reestablish ourselves in Italy so that we can do more work there. Also, hopefully, actually raise some money locally in Italy for Italian projects. And so that's something we are actively doing and would be opening an office in the coming year or so. But one of the things we need are really good projects across Italy. And of course, Italy has no shortage of incredible places. But I think for this reestablishment of our presence there, we need something that is a little bit iconic, has a bit of cachet, but that also would be a project, a bite-sized project that we could take on. So a part of a site or a specific room in a church or in some sort of site, a castle. We have this hospital that's come to us in Milan as an option as well. But would love to hear from all of you about possible projects you're working on, where you think our expertise makes sense and we could be useful, and where there might be opportunities. And then I think we could definitely very happy to connect the network with our people in Italy as well as across Europe. For that sort of exchange and to see what types of expertise we might call on through SIRA, because that would be very helpful for us.
I think that's pretty fantastic. And to end up and conclude, I think it's another issue. You talked about communication, but also about dissemination. So this is one question that comes from the audience also. Actually, which are your international platforms that actively you use to promote your projects, which could be also interesting because those platforms, then they became the interface of communication for all of us. And thank you, Franz, for the question.
Yeah, of course. This is an area that I think this is a great question. And again, I think it's an area that we at World Monuments Fund are trying to do better. But I do also think across the field, it's something that we need to figure out how to do a bit better as well. And it kind of goes to that, what I said earlier about we need better communicators who can really talk about all the complex things that we do and make it very accessible and engaging for a broader audience. So we are lucky enough to have a whole communications team on staff at World Monuments Fund. And so they really shape and structure that and use various social media, Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook. And then we have a number of also online events, kind of like this one, that we do on a regular schedule, where we'll get anywhere from 100 to 300 participants to join us, and we'll talk about a specific project or a specific theme. But the easy answer to the question is that it's our own platform. We have to kind of create that platform. And, it's very funny because I think in the field, we're quite known. If I meet a colleague or another professional, they know World Monuments Fund, they've heard of us, they know. Outside of the field, we're not known. And that's what we're struggling with. How do we kind of get that message out about heritage generally, and then more specifically about World Monuments Fund? And I think we have a lot to learn from our colleagues in the environmental preservation and conservation world, because they've been very successful at talking about climate change and the need to save certain species, and making that really accessible to a broad public. And I think we still have to learn how to do that. It's getting better, but we're not there yet. So I wish I had an answer, like a magic answer that you could use, Franz, but I don't. We're trying to figure it out.
Thank you so much for your answer and a great presentation. I suppose it's a big challenge how to engage with platforms, but yeah, I appreciate your answer. Thank you very much.
And I would encourage all of you, we do have an active, Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn presence. So I would encourage all of you to please follow us, join us, visit the website to look at projects, but also please be in touch. As I said, we're looking for good projects in Italy, and I think this is the right group to turn to. So if you have some wonderful ideas, please let me know, and I'm happy to, I don't know, Anna, how we do that, happy to share my email with all of you. It's very simple. It's jbell, J-B-E-L-L, @wmf.org. So please do feel free to
if you agree, Jonathan, I could share it in the chat.
Yeah,
right
that's
now.
Perfect. Please. Or I could even write it in if that makes sense. But yes, please. Oops. Yeah, that's right. No, it's not right. I will be happy to be in touch and respond. Yeah, thank you. And thank you all for this wonderful opportunity. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for being present this evening. And just like a quick reminder that our last online talk from this first cycle, it's scheduled on 28th of May, with the presence of Susan McDonald from Getty Conservation Institute. So we'll close, let's say, the small cycle strong.
We'll have a blast with Susan, a dear friend and wonderful colleague.
So it's thanks also to Stefania, who collaborated quite a lot with them. So we did have, for us, it was quite a rich, extremely rich cycle, also to see that in the end, we have the same issues and we try to work in order to improve our presence on the various settings around the globe, but while discussing main issues. Climate change, water scarcity, the value of heritage, is like the big issues and topics if we think also about sustainable goals and anything.
Exactly. Yeah.
So thanks once again. Thanks for everyone, and especially for my colleagues, Alessia, Sonia, and Stefania. And hope to
Thank you very much, Jonathan, again. Thank you a lot.
Thanks you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
hope to see you in person someday.
Let's hope so.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
In Milan, we are waiting for you.
Excellent.
Okay, so good evening to all and see you on May 28th.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Thank you so much. Thank you.